This is a presentation of SBE 15, New York City.
Everybody meet Walter Freeman. And
Hello.
Walter
Oh,
is
Walter.
he's the man. There, sometimes you never know who you get when you call support. And with Walter, you get the man. He knows everything. Now it kind of scares me. He's got these chainsaws behind him. It's like there's the secret life of Walter. But he's got the most manicured lawn in Quincy. And he likes to cut things up, it looks like, with his chainsaws. So and this is a roundtable. This is just a discussion. Anybody have a question or a comment or an opening? And Walter, do you have something to open with?
Well, thank you for the kind words. My goodness, I'm a little bit like an idiot savant that I don't support uh, other brands of transmitters. I've really been steeped in the Harris and Gates airline, and I'm glad to help. And I would say one of my weaknesses is if you get too far down into the theory, like something about Xperi on the Gen 4 GUI, no clue. There are things on there that I'm not even sure Xperi knows anymore. But I'm certainly glad to help with the practical day-to-day, get it going. Really glad to help.
Well, you've certainly been the guy in that. I know I've sent you an email at times instead of calling and ask a question, and you always come back with pictures and circles and anything and all the detail in between as to how to do what I'm looking to do. So but you bring up a good point about HD. And Gates Air is the one company with the FMXI 4G that with the embedded the box that is your importer exporter. It's not running a Windows computer. But Walter, you know that very well. It's a reliable box. Anything to add on that? Anybody have any questions about their FMXI 4G if you have one?
Certainly the complexity of FMXI 4G is stunning, and all the options, the different ways of routing audio, and now with 3 network interfaces, it's just stunningly more complex. I mean, there certainly are basic ways to hook it up, and we are working on a new manual for it feverishly. It's years in the making, and with the COVID and all that stuff and restaffing, it's been a challenge to get the time to work on that. And speaking of complexity, when I first started working here, one of the most challenging tasks to work with an engineer on was measuring composite audio peak to peak with an oscilloscope. Just having an oscilloscope was a bar people had to get over, and now it's like, oh my goodness, you've got to have some rocket science under your belt, or it's you can get whiplash real fast.
What do you find in taking the service calls? What do you find the biggest problems are that you're working with people on? Is it HD? Is it on those devices, or is it on analog?
Uh, it's the spectrum. Just take, for example, the Gates 1, 2, and 5. This is the follow-on simplified version of the SX that predated it, that had a controller that was looking for ways to turn off, and the Gates is looking for ways to stay on. And with Gates 1, 2, and 5, there's some common issues. Electrolytic capacitors, particularly on the oscillator board, can cause underdrive. And so there are some common go-tos in certain products. And certainly I've been here definitely long enough to see products come and wane, even go past their Indian summer. I would say the CD-Link STL was one that I saw the designers, we contracted that out, contracted design. and I saw that come, and now that has completely left our building.
Hmm.
If you've got any CD links, um, Michael Patton down Louisiana is your place to go, I think, for that. Maybe let's see, what's that place up in Red Hook? Dave Groth.
Oh,
He,
yes,
he,
Dave
he might be
Grove,
able to do some
Data
stuff
Wave.
with that
Mhm.
data wave. But yeah, so and of course now
Hmm.
tubes and FM. Oh my goodness. I was just talking to someone today who was looking at the cost of new and rebuilt, and there's I let them know about Kenatron, which is in the East Coast, the tube rebuilder. Are they that tremendously better? I think they've got an edge over iMac, at least from what I hear. I haven't installed the tube in a number of years myself, but yeah, certainly a wide product line at Gates here. I wanted to add that, back when I started, they made phasers and antennas were over the antenna range. There were still TV cameras in the warehouse, with
Hmm.
3 tubes, three Plumicon tubes, is that what you call them? So
Wow.
there would be RGBs. They had to split the spectrum. There were still some of those nameplated Harris, and I think built partially at one of our facilities. So I did get to see even the previous dying technology. They certainly moved on with solid state.
And as far as AM versus FM, I presume more of what you're supporting is FM.
Yes, there's certainly mostly FM, especially HD radio. Uh, but AM, wow, there's still a lot of AM activity out there. Um, the DAX is probably challenging for a lot of folks to work on because you pretty much have to have an RS-232 connection
Mhm.
to get into it. And we get questions about DX and 3DX. And it's, when it comes to AM, you talk about the MA3 testing coming up, I'm aware of whole nations and regions that have just switched off AM, like Brazil. I mean,
Right.
just stunning. I went down there to help roll out HD radio on some AMs, and they looked at it, and the overall AM thing, of course, at this point, is poof, gone off their bands. So
Interesting.
so here in the US, we've got the amazing mix of wide open spaces where, AM is very good because it covers a wide area. And then also uh, more, urban areas where AM has a big footprint for a small signal. But to see an MA3 testing progressing, wow. And that dovetails into the FMXI4G as far as an AM HD radio exciter. It has the hooks in it and a cutout on the back panel to be the future uh, follow-on to Dexstar. I don't know if anything's been done to make that option board that would go into it. Certainly that would be, would it be on the table? I don't know. There was a plan to have those hooks in there hardware-wise. Certainly Brian's probably closer, Brian Suzik is closer to how that decision would ever be made. Certainly not anything I can weigh in on. I just receive the technology from sales and engineering and just help people make it go.
Mhm. Hey, Brian, anything to add on that?
Well, on the AM side, I mean, it's a challenging marketplace even here in the US at this point. I was people are turning off big stations even in New York for the value of the land that these towers sit on, and that's that kind of drives where R&D dollars go.
Mhm. And there's more R&D that you guys are spending on further development of I mean, I know there are software updates, firmware updates that come fairly often on the FMXI4G. So that'll continue. Is there something bigger and better in the pipeline?
Not that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, Brian mentioned stations going dark right here in Quincy, Illinois. An
Hmm.
AM was shut off. It was WGEM AM is off. They have their TV and their FM. And I guess they looked at the cost of fixing their 4-tower array and transmitter problems and just pulled the plug on it.
It is unfortunate, and other, especially in some of these smaller markets, other than being a feeder for a translator, on the FM side, it can be difficult, especially if you have a directional. So that always adds to the adventure. Any support or any other comments for anybody in the group? I mean, we've got, a good group here, and
I have a question.
Yes.
Bud, you and I had spoken a couple weeks ago about one of the vendors. I had gotten a vendor had reached out to me about this new antenna style that requires a lot less real estate. And I'm working on getting the specs from that company. I think it's called Worldwide Antennas or something like that, Worldwide Antenna, based out of Massachusetts. But this is an interesting idea because it looks like this is a much lower profile antenna system. Just curious if anybody that has actually seen one in use, or if our good friends from Gates here have set up a transmitter on one.
that's a good question. Brian, up in Glens Falls, didn't they take a tower down and put up one of those other antennas at the 1450, I think?
Yeah, they did. And there's a couple in Connecticut. There is a station in Massachusetts running that antenna system that you were talking about, the real low profile.
Yeah, that's the one.
it's
I
in
think it's owned by.
It's
That's
in
one that's owned
Gardner.
by Tom Poulos.
Yeah, it's in Gardner, Mass, and they recently got FCC approval for nighttime operation, I believe. I know that station seems to have a pretty good coverage area. And the antenna that you're thinking about is the Valmont.
Right.
It's a fiberglass pole, like a flagpole thing.
And how would you, I mean, that change happened long enough ago. How would you say that performance was when they took the tower down and then put that Valmont up?
It's not as good as the tower.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other experience with the Valmont or any other type of AM tower, emitter, radiator?
Hey, Brian, is it a comparable height? You have to excuse me, I've never seen one.
Comparable height.
I mean, it's taking up less real estate, but can you expound on that a little bit?
The Valmont
Yeah.
antenna is somewhat shorter than the ones that I've seen than a conventional tower.
Okay, and its performance has been a little off,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
under 100 feet. What are they like?
under 100.
Yes, they're like 90 to some odd.
Yeah.
There may be a little bit of a change. I have seen them. I've listened to stations play through them. I never made any measurements on them.
Thank
So I couldn't attest to the stability or anything. That would be interesting. Walter, do you know of any out there that are using a Valmont or?
No support calls I've received were also noted as that kind of antenna.
Mhm.
Either they just didn't bring it up or they don't have it.
I just put the link to the hardware in the chat. The one from Worldwide Antenna. I believe the station in Boston is the one that's owned by Tom Poulos, who's the developer of this antenna. So if you guys want to just give it a quick look, this is what I got the call about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, once you guys go and take a look in that chat, Herb Squire and Lori have joined, and there's Herb in his old transmitter room with the Z transmitter that I believe he put in. So What do you think about that, Herb? Remember that day?
No, that's great. Huh?
It was so good to see you and a pleasure to take you up there and let you see that. So, we're talking about FM. And Walter, are you doing support for TV as well?
No, I will help with TV support calls if someone needs a manual or a schematic. It's something that I can just crunch data,
Okay.
but not doing. So I think I'm somewhat of an anomaly, and there were folks in that position before me who did no TV, like Jeff Griggs or Ralph Wegman.
Mhm.
But no, not doing TV.
Okay.
Walter, are you doing anything with the Interplex side of things?
Yes, a little bit. We have a laboratory in-house that we call the iLab, short for Interoperability Lab, and we keep in it mocked up equipment. So if I send you pictures of screens, that's probably where it came from. And
Mm.
we've got the IP links and HD link and FMX 4G and a nice little Sophia mod monitor that we can use, which we got the Sophia because we needed to diagnose, believe it or not, RDS, because RDS is now an option that you can purchase with a software key in fax and GX FM transmitters. But yeah, no TV.
Okay.
I've certainly walked past a few, and if you're curious if we still have any tube TV transmitters mocked up, we do not. That disappeared just about earlier this year. It was moved and never finished, and of course, tube transmitters for TV just gone. Was that the EEV made those among others?
E2V.
Yeah, okay. And that laboratory got an FLX, a liquid cool transmitter, which we needed partly to mock up and test our new display board for the fax line. There'll be a new control and display board for fax because we're about 14 years into the design or so, and it's harder to get parts and the display and whatnot. So that'll be a change. So fax and FLX, new production, I don't think quite has it yet. And then eventually repairs will have to do it too. If you need a control display board, which of course you'll need a door in the metal, and you know how that goes, ouch. And ouch for the cost, for all the extra stuff you need. And the GUI will change. It'll become more like the TV, ULXTE and whatnot, where wonderfully, hopefully someday, you can download the MIB files directly from an FM product, which you can't currently do, at least the fax and FLX line.
So you touched on water cooled versus air cooled. What in on FM at this point? Obviously, that's been very common on the TV side, but where's that dividing point at the and either you know or maybe Brian would have that answer.
Well, the smallest one we make is 10 kilowatt.
Is 10, yeah.
Wow. And compared to air cooled, what they're like 20% water cooled FMs out there.
I'd have to guess 10%. Brian, what do you think?
But they're more popular at higher power levels.
Right. Okay.
Well,
And
you
it's a
know,
great alternative because it saves energy, especially when you've got a high cooling load. Go ahead.
You
It
know,
saves everything. If you've ever had the pleasure of, I've done a couple of these where the station had a large VHF or UHF, typical tube transmitter with, 100 tons of air conditioning and all of that. And they replaced it in DTV with a In one case, I can think of a 10 kilowatt Thomson UHF transmitter. One rack, water cooled, couldn't hear the thing. Right next to it was the Z16 running HD, and you could hear it, and that's why we still had air conditioning. The water cooled, I can't think of an argument against it. You save space inside that's expensive. You can plumb the darn thing almost anywhere outside. It's generally going to be, cheaper. There should be a real estate savings, so your lease, and then your air conditioning goes down, so that's an additional space, lease, whatever savings, and probably electrical cost savings. I think we got a lot of folks who just think FM is air cooled for some reason, and when the AMs have been water cooled for a long time, why not the FMs?
Right.
There's no reason not to.
Ed, have you
It
done
is
those installs as well?
I have not done the Gates Air water cooled, although I have seen some, and I got to talk to Tim a bunch when he was handling that. But I have done the water cooled AMs and TVs across a couple of different manufacturers, and I keep coming back to, why are we still doing air cooled and FM? Why?
tends to be a mindset.
Yes.
You have
I
them
think,
Mets and those bean counters.
And the thing is, the liquid cooled, it's once an engineer experiences it, and like you say, it's quiet in the room. There's not a lot of heat in the room, and also, air conditioners are really not designed to work in some cold climate environments. The top of Mount Mansfield, for example, or another advantage of the liquid cooled transmitter is that if you're in a salt air environment, that you're not bringing salt air into the room to get the corrosion and everything.
No, you bring up an interesting point
That's a
too, is
huge
that in colder climates, running air conditioning for your transmitter becomes a problem, because you've got to have these so-called low ambient kits to vary the speed of the fan of the outdoor unit to maintain the head pressure. It becomes way more complicated to keep this stuff running.
Yes.
So does it become more complicated? I haven't serviced water cooled myself, but does it, or is it just the installation that just has more steps? Understanding where I come from, I was able to turn over a site, take out an old transmitter, put in a Z, and hook up a Burke remote control, obviously with two other guys, and we would do that in 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's a little different here, but how much more time is
I
involved
guess
in that install?
it's the offset. So yes, you were able to put that transmitter in very quickly, but you're still putting in a solution from 60 years ago. And what are you doing to the built-in power bill and complexity of the plant to keep using something in terms of a cooling technology, especially, and the other issues of how large a footprint it has, and all these other things. Are you just kicking the can down the road to keep using supporting technologies that are only going to become harder and more expensive to maintain? And in 15 years, you're going to be going, we didn't save anything. We should have spent the extra day running some piping and had an outdoor unit.
Yeah.
And now we wouldn't be fixing this stupid thing again.
Yeah, I would say, the installs that I've been involved in, it's an extra couple of days for doing the plumbing. And we offer two different versions of the plumbing. One is the hose, which is, some people want to do the hose. It's quick, and the other is copper, and they're both equally good solutions. The copper looks real pretty when it's done.
And the irony too is, and I think Gates is the same as the other guys. All of the water cooled, I shouldn't say water cooled, all of the liquid cooled systems that I have seen, I've had a back end pump and plumbing and valve system and all that. And very few stations have a complete backup HVAC system because of the cost and
Right.
size. But they're building in the backups with these liquid cooled systems.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the coolant that we use is something that you can buy. It's very common, and your car probably uses it. It's called Prestone 50/50.
Interesting. So it's just a matter of watching for leaks.
Yeah, and even that's not that hard. I mean, I think you can take the romance of broadcast engineering out of the equation. You can probably make a very good business and OSHA case for going with liquid cooled versus air cooled.
Yeah, in some buildings, like World Trade, the heat exchanger itself is what's called a plate exchanger. So instead of having the outdoor units, it's a plate that the coolant goes through. On one side is the transmitter, and on the other side is the building's chilled water or whatever. I know World Trade uses that to heat as heat functions elsewhere in the building. So, you don't depending on the install location. High-rise buildings, you may have not need an outdoor heat exchanger whatsoever.
John Frex, I know you've had a bit of exposure. What's your take on this?
Yeah. So yeah, in big buildings, especially trade, where the water cooling availability is from the building, that's yeah, it's a great way to go to not have the wear and tear, the maintenance, the mechanical issues with regular air conditioning for air cooled. In some other buildings, it becomes a little bit more difficult where you have to supply your own heat exchanging equipment because the building itself was not built for providing that type of heat rejection. And but in general, I think it's really a good way to go. As the other guys have said, footprint, size of the equipment, the space in the transmitter room itself. And even with the advent of needing interplate heat exchanging, either for metallic reasons, between existing copper systems with the heat exchanger and perhaps the equipment itself, which type of material that it's made of isn't going to play nicely with copper piping. Then even with those restrictions, I think being able to have the output power of the transmitter in its form factor, in its size form factor, and do it as a heat exchange with liquid cool, it's a real benefit. A little bit of moving parts, but in regular air conditioned spaces, there's a lot more stuff to break, so to speak. With air conditioning systems, a lot more maintenance we've found.
So I know George Evans just replaced his transmitters. And George, did you go air cooled or water cooled on that?
I went air cooled. I've been trying to keep quiet because I don't know. I mean, the water cooled was an attractive thought, but I felt that a place that is hard to get to, and it's not. You have to crawl up the building to manage it. I wasn't feeling great about it, managing a water cooled system that's not nearby, so to speak.
But yet, you've struggled, and you're actually a good case here where you've struggled with air conditioning in your room up on the top of Montefiore there.
Yes,
So
yes, I know. I was I did give it a lot of thought, but yeah, I went with air cooled, and I guess I could be one of those I don't know, old time thinking.
Yeah,
No, that I would tend to think that building that's so near and dear to my heart that George is in. Um,
yeah.
yeah, that would be an interesting cost benefit analysis between sticking with air because getting anything done up there, any kind of infrastructure, I can imagine that putting the racks somewhere for the external heat exchangers, it could have been $100,000 or $200,000 solution by the time you solved everybody's concerns. I mean, that was well, I learned about war paint from George doing that project. There was there was nothing up there that was normal, easy, quick, sane. If you're gonna have to start building external stuff to hold the heat exchangers, it probably would not be worth the effort in that place.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I was under a bit of pressure to get these transmitters replaced because the old ones were not well. So that factored into it as well. Yeah.
I had a question about smaller installations. Because we have because so much of our stuff is data driven now, we have, in our stations, we have these incredible equipment rooms that have all these servers and all kinds of electronic stuff that's basically just, you know, purpose-built computers. And I've been looking at, there's some big data centers that use water-cooled racks. And I'm wondering if that would be applicable for something like some of the smaller faxes and some of that. Because I've got a site that it's really tough to keep it temperature controlled. It's on top of a mountain. We've got a lot of humidity. It'd be really lovely to be able to seal that room off and use something like a closed loop, made for data centers, but a cooling loop. I know it wouldn't apply for big transmitters, but we have 3 fax ones. We have another site that's got Nautel 300s. There's a lot of places where I'm just thinking that might work out. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it or what your thoughts are on that.
It's interesting. So Brian, what is the cost difference percentage-wise, air versus liquid cooled on like say a 10 kilo?
It's going to be about 25% more for the liquid
Okay.
in acquisition. But then, once you start factoring in air conditioning, the cost of air conditioning, because let's face it, air conditioners, even with a high SEER rating, they're still lossy. So you're putting heat into a room to have another device transfer that heat back out of the room. It's a lot. It becomes a loss. So there's I work with stations all the time, and you get an electric bill. How much is the electric bill now? And what's the rate per kilowatt hour? What's the air conditioning system that's currently in place, if there is one? And I've got a spreadsheet. I can put all that information in, and it gives you the cost benefit and the return on the investment. And in most cases, it's under 3 years.
I would think that this is going to become a more critical issue as we do more HD, where your new transmitter isn't going to be putting the same amount of TPO and heat into the room, but is an increase in electrical and maybe in heat, and so you're rethinking everything. But some of these systems don't even have a compressor, is my understanding. They're just purely a heat exchanger, and so you don't have all the issues of a compressor and locked rotor and starting current and all that issue.
Nope. And the fans on the heat exchangers are, controlled. They speed up or slow down. So if it's cold outside, I've seen it where they're not even spinning. That on a cold day. If it's 100 degrees outside, they're going to be moving some air.
So is your recommendation,
And
when using water cooled, let's say it's low power, and you mentioned earlier, Brian, an area that may be near the, near the water, near the ocean or something that has a lot of, salt water in the environment and it's humid. So now you're not running that air through the transmitter, but do people still maintain some sort of closed loop in the room to prevent that moisture and salt air from getting into the transmitter at that point?
yeah, I mean, the building still is gonna get solar gain of heat in the summertime. And like, you've got a bunch of other devices that are making heat in that transmitter room. I mean, some of the audio processors
Right.
have a big heat sink. And the other thing is that the liquid cooled transmitters generally the liquid cooled 20, for example, will make 20 kilos of FM plus minus 14 HD. So the back off isn't as great as in the air cooled product.
Mhm. Walter,
So-
are you
Well,
seeing,
you want to comment on that?
Well, I just want to mention that there is a certain westerly site that's basically in a smoking hot desert, and it's got a liquid cool, and on really hot days they fold back because of temperature. So that's probably not ever going to occur in the East Coast. I would presume not. It's a rarity. I think it's just one site that does that, but it gets like 130 degrees outside
wow,
and in the blazing hot sun, no shade. So liquid cool may not save you everywhere, but that's only one example. So don't be negative on liquid cooling just because of one site. So
And
you know,
and
you can
one of the other pushbacks that some engineers who have never experienced liquid cooling is, and it was already mentioned, leaks. You know, if you look at some of the TV transmitters that we have, that there's 150 PA modules, there's 300 connectors, and trust me, if that was a weak point, we would have discovered it a long time ago.
right,
Um,
right. Interesting.
and literally the coolant loop on our transmitters for both radio and TV it's a closed loop, so it's just like your automobile.
Mhm.
It's got an expansion tank, and it's kind of just like your car. I mean,
But it's just a technology or method of cooling that we don't think of it at first, but yet it's in high use elsewhere in automobiles. Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, the pumps used in the HE3 pump module are made by Grundfos. Am I saying that even remotely correctly? Grundfos, and they are like Cadillac, fantastic. They also make pumps like in submersibles for wells, and they just work for decades. They're just fantastically good pumps.
and the pump module itself has two of those pumps, and the system only needs one of the pumps, so you can run them in parallel, or some sites do the AB, run 1 week on one side, 1 week on the other.
Any other comments or questions from the group?
Yeah, there is another benefit to the liquid cool I've seen in one site. Just what Brian was talking about, the dual pumps. I've seen one TV site, but we apply to FM. They are using the secondary pump and some valves so they can switch things around. The backup pump is actually on the liquid cooled dummy load, so they didn't have to keep a 50 kilowatt dummy load either when they did an update, because they were able to just use the backup pump to cool the coaxial resistor load, and it was another savings.
Interesting.
If
Other
I just,
experience from the group?
yeah, if I just might mention two other installation issues. So if you think about whether you get hose or the copper pipe, it comes empty, no surprise, and you need to fill it. And so you got to get all the air out. And so there are these interesting little devices that you put at the highest point in your plumbing system, and it's got a little float valve inside. And when the float valve drops down, because there's an air pocket, it opens a little orifice to the outside, which usually is a Schrader type. You can leave the Schrader cap off or leave it on, and the air just wheezes out. And then there's the expansion tank will relax a little bit and make up for that loss in liquid. And you need to keep an eye on some gauges, that your low pressure side doesn't go below the relaxed minimum pressure of the expansion tank. So the tank is still in use. And these are just basic things. Make sure you got, I don't know, minimum 15 PSI on the low side, and you wheezed all the air out, and then it'll just be sit there and run.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Changing, we're coming up on 7 o'clock soon, but changing a topic here. Walter, stations that suffer damage from lightning? I mean, it was different back with tube transmitters. They're usually able to handle things like that, and now with solid state devices on or close to the output of the transmitter, and some transmitters are better than others. What's your experience been in supporting stations that may have had lightning damage?
The current crop of solid state transmitters has low damage. They're
Okay.
not glass jawed at all. The fax LPFM have AC line filters, and occasionally one will get fried by lightning, because as you know, when lightning hits full force, it is unstoppable from hurting something. But replacing just an RFI filter, not too bad. And they're doing very well, very well. And the blade power supplies that we've got, that we have an exchange program on those. And so it's not when it dies, you just got to buy new. We've got an exchange program, and they've been doing very well. So it's we talked earlier about the Z series,
Mhm.
and the Z series did not come with blade plug-in switching supplies. It had big iron, and anybody who's moved one of those knows it's got big iron inside. And at this point, switching supplies have come of age. They're rugged, and that doesn't mean you can't live without surge suppression at your site. You definitely have to take advantage of the best technique. The way things are installed is probably more important than the components that you use. Your coax coming in needs to have a ground kit where it leaves the tower. Needs to have a ground kit where the AC lines enter the building, with a wide copper strap going down to a building perimeter ground. And it would be nice if the surge suppression for your AC mains was co-located with that ground window, if you will, where the coaxers come in. So you don't have the situation where surge flows through your equipment on the way between AC utility and the tower. But failure due to lightning is fairly low. And definitely the switching supplies have definitely come of age. They're very good.
And I know this all depends, it often depends on the transmitter, but one of the things I saw at NAB last year, because it was in the BGS booth, were the quarter wave shorting stubs on the output of FM transmitters. Anybody have any experience there that they can talk to and making that purchase?
Well, not about quarter wave stubs, but all the Gates Air transmitters, the RF has a ground path
Mhm.
inside them. not a quarter wave stub, but some kind of ground path. So they're not going to float and arc over.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, cover other transmitters as well that wouldn't have that similar design that Gates Air has been building. Um, any other questions? Any other comments from our group here?
Oh, it's very interesting.
Walter, any closing comments?
Well, I just want to help people out, and pretty much my day-to-day is driven by your questions and what you need right now. So let me know, and I'll fill in the blanks. I learned a long time ago that folks who go on site to fix transmitters need a lot of things. They bring a lot of different skills to the table, whether it's having a four-wheel drive vehicle and knowing how to use it, and then when you get to the site, maybe you just need a quick refresher on an issue in a transmitter. That's where we come in as a manufacturer, providing support. So we're glad to do it.
Yeah,
Good
there have been
point.
times, as a contractor and a lot of the guys here in the group, I understand, we all have a lot of things to do and a lot on our plate. I know there have been times I've emailed Walter ahead of time and have said, hey, I'm going to go deal with this issue. I wanted to give you a heads up. Are you around? And of course, Walter comes back, yes, and you may want to look at this and that. And so even, when I walk in the door, I have something to start with. That's something I recommend as well. Because I know there have been times you've been working with somebody and then, there's somebody next in line and an engineer may be waiting at a site to get a little bit of get in your head a little bit and see what problem they're trying to fix. So is that truly a benefit for you? I know you've got to create a service ticket or something for it. You've got to track that.
Oh, don't worry about the service tickets. That's just all our inside
Yeah.
busy work. Yeah, if you got a question, the more intel you've got, the better.
Mhm.
Right.
And you probably know that when you're trying to gather intel from people, intelligence meaning someone says, "Oh, we're off the air." Oh, well, what does that mean? No audio or no RF? So I mean, you got to drill down and see what the underlying issue is.
So and that's a topic that for another, and it's all part of our mentoring program and helping some of our younger people how to do that because, most people in the group, we kind of, we know how to do that part. We've been down that road, but I can see where, as the technology gets more complex, especially with data paths carrying the HD data, and there have been a couple of gotchas there that you've been very good on, in part because of it giving you a heads up ahead of time. But it can still happen. It when you get out on site, you want to make the most of your time out there. And I will say, Walter, you have saved my butt a number of times with providing that info, and I save every email I get from you.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I couldn't do my job without Walter over the years. I want to tell you, I really
I couldn't either.
appreciate it.
But you touched on something, and I'm curious, Walter, how much are you seeing your support of the transmitter, the transmission system, the transmitter site? How much are you seeing, or are you having to support things that used to be at the studio that we now have to worry about? The IT world, the audio feed is no longer in a lot of cases on a piece of RG58 and composite. We've got audio over IP in different flavors. We've got Comrex and a lot of time codecs at the transmitter sites. We've got all these other things that didn't used to be the transmitter are now out there and attached and are sources of the problem that you're trying to troubleshooting. Are you having to, get more involved in learning about those things in order to help the customer?
Well, let me say this about that. If you've got our current products out at a transmitter site, if you do not have internet and we can't remote in, it makes it more challenging on both ends. Because with a remote session, we can see things and move screen to screen and find the issues a lot faster. And if that means maybe you need to buy some Elon Musk Starlink because you can get a portable, and if you need to get something like that to do your job, now a lot of people do hotspots off their cell phone, so that covers that as well. But station owners, site builders, man, these days you've got to have internet access, and of course that's no help for an HT35 or something older. So yeah, it's the new equipment far more needs to be able to be accessed also because the support staff, the engineers who are responsible for it, are often some distance away. Sometimes many hours of driving. So to reach the site electronically, go ahead.
So Walter, one thing that you touch on, looking at the names here, I know everybody here has a lot of responsibility, and the transmitter may be a small part, and you may be running from a transmitter
It was
issue
just
to a
Caitlin at the
studio
house
issue.
and she
Let me try to
she
mute
was
this.
going over to Jackie's school for a holiday thing that
Why can't I find it?
siblings couldn't come to.
You got a window open. I got one like that.
Yeah, but where I'm going with this is, and Rich, you're an example because I follow you Facebook, and I see some of the things that you end up dealing
Yeah,
with.
it's-
And one
Dylan
minute
asked
you're
me
talking
to,
somebody at a tower
Yeah.
site.
We're hearing another conversation, so it's a little hard, but
Yeah. Andy, you able to?
William, could you please mute yourself?
Yeah, I think I
I'm
just.
trying
There we
to
go.
mute
There we
right
go.
now.
All right.
Well,
I got it.
yeah, Bud, what you said, I'm in that unique position where, except for about 3 of our transmitters, one of which is a helicopter flight, even from my house here, all the rest of them are jet flights, anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, costing several $100s. And the more that in the last 10, 11 years, I totally agree with Walter. I can do so much more now with people as long as we've got sites that didn't have internet. Now we've got stations that in the last 4 or 5 years have pretty decent internet, some with Starlink. And I can do, I would say 75% of the maintenance that I do or the help I do is now online. I can call them. We can use, WhatsApp or Facebook video. And I can say, if it's an old transmitter, hold up the phone. Let me see what you're looking at.
Yes.
It saves me a jet flight. And we're entering an age where that's really a crucial part of it. And I agree with Walter. We're looking at buying a Starlink portable for our team here for that very reason, because we go to some pretty remote sites, and
I would like
I
to
really
add,
appreciate it.
I would like to add that I'm sitting here with a Jabra Engage 75 headset that I use day to day. But if you're in a noisy environment, here
Yeah.
is a headset made by Husqvarna, and not only does it have hearing protection, because this is designed to be used when you have a chainsaw,
Right.
in a noise canceling microphone. This is so a tree climber can talk to his ground crew while they're running a chainsaw and a wood chipper. So if you've got a noisy site, I'm just going to say it, cheesy Bluetooth earbud is not going to cut it.
No.
And often when people call in, the site is noisy, they either have to turn off their Bluetooth and just use their phone, which then you're only hearing in one ear yourself. Now I can hear you great, but you can't hear me. So being prepared for high noise voice communications is also a very important part of service.
Boy, that's a great tip. I gotta look
That's
for
a
that
great
headset.
point.
That's a
Can
terrific.
Can you put that
terrific
in like
tip.
the chat or something? That's a great tip.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is that. I mean, we overlook some of these things. The
Yeah.
point where I was kind of slowly driving at was, out in the field, we cover a lot of different areas. And I think when making a decision to purchase a product, it's always good to know what you have for support on the other side. And Brian, I can tell you that I am certain that you have sold transmitters because Walter is the support guy, because he knows and works with that intimately day in, day out, and he knows the product inside out. And that's a lot of confidence, knowing that, okay, I need to go fix something. I'll probably need Walter's help because it may have gotten pushed out of my brain. Oh, yeah, that table, or yes, this is, and it may be a tickler when I email him. But this is Walter, and people like Walter are resources.
I tell people all the time, if you call Gates Air, you don't get Walter, call back until you do.
That's almost always that's my go-to Ed as well. I would add to that too what you said about the headset, which is a brilliant idea. I can't believe I didn't do it years ago. I bought a plug-in Bluetooth transmitter so that I could go to a site and like plug into any audio output and listen to it on my headset. I don't know why I never thought of that years ago, but it was like, oh,
So
it's like
this
simple.
Husqvarna XCOM Active is fairly new to the U.S. market. This may not be the one to get. There are other ones, but this hooks to your phone with Bluetooth, and this particular model even has an FM radio in it. I don't know. That's great, but
that is good.
I don't have a lot of hours on it. I got it so that I could take support phone calls while I'm mowing. So I'm still working.
God.
I just got it, and so there may be some other ones. This may not be the one to get, but it's a place to look, and just an idea to cover the issue of, can you talk while it's noisy, and can you listen while it's noisy?
That sounds like the headset my son has for his motorcycle.
Right.
He's got a pouch with his cell phone on, it's mounted to the handlebar, and a headset that's Bluetooth,
Perfect.
and he can carry on a conversation.
That's perfect. That's exact. This is not the only kind. Yeah, certainly the motorsports industries have theirs as well.
Yeah, just shooting ranges, people have some of those too, so it's good.
The other part that you didn't touch on yet is if you do it that way, you have two hands free, as opposed to holding your phone up to your ear and trying to do so. There's a lot of benefit here. Final call for questions. It's 7:12 at this point, and we're running a little bit late. Any other comments, questions, input? Going once.
Yeah, just want to say thanks for letting me join you from so far away. It's great to talk to Walter, and great to see all you guys. People that I almost always see remotely, or maybe once in a while at NAB. And as I wind down my career, who knows? I'll never quit, but I'm reduce it by a lot. So thank you very much.
Well, Rich, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of this. You get the long distance award today. Sorry. Normally, Keith is the one that's calling in, from the furthest distance, but I'm gonna.
Well, it's 3 o'clock and it's starting to get pretty dark, so that's Alaska for you.
It's dark here already. Hey, Walter, thank you so much for taking the time and being on here. And
my pleasure.
I appreciate your wisdom, and every time I talk to you and work with you on something that I learned something.
Thanks for joining us. Please remember to subscribe to SBE 15 New York City.